you. All right. Good morning. All right. I mean, we don't very often get a former president in town, do we? Thank you. You guys can sit down. How were the pancakes? Good. Rocky, Carl, everybody, thanks for the pancakes this morning. Thank them for the pancakes. So the President Clinton's going to be out here in a couple minutes, and he's going to talk to you about Hillary Clinton and this election and why it's so important, and I think we all know. And I just want to talk to you for a couple minutes before we bring him out here about how important this is and what's at stake. To me, that's what every election is about. What's at stake for our country? What's at stake for our community? And we have a unique opportunity, again, being in the Mahoning Valley and being in Ohio, that we're going to determine in many, many ways who the next president of the United States may be. And we are pretty confident who it's going to be, correct? But we've got a lot of work to do between now and Election Day. And that's what this is about, getting people registered to vote, getting excited, knocking on doors, making phone calls. And we need all of you to continue to be a part of that, because we're running against somebody unlike anything we've ever seen before. And I will tell you, a lot of you grew up like I grew up, right? My little Italian grandmother had this saying she used to say, Anth. She used to say, I don't like this guy. I said, why not, Grandma? Why don't you like her? She'd say, due faccia. The guy got two faces, right? Due faccia. He got two faces. Donald Trump got two faces, okay? Now he comes to communities like ours, and he's going to take on China, and he's going to take on Mexico, and he's going to be for the working class. Now there's a report that just came out 2 days ago that said that 2 out of the last 3 construction projects that Donald Trump was a part of, he went out and he didn't buy American steel. He bought Chinese steel and aluminum to build his projects. But he's gonna come here and he's gonna say, I'm gonna be the guy to take on China, right? What are you buying Chinese steel for that's getting dumped into our communities and putting American steel workers out of business? You due faccia. You got two faces, right? And I would like to think that those of us in this community, we like to see our candidates campaign, maybe come to this hall, go to the fish fry, shake hands, let you look at us. I look at somebody's record, okay? And I look at this guy's record of not necessarily business, how you've treated people. How do you treat people when no one's really looking, right? So I want to say this because all of our friends in the building and construction trades who work extremely hard when it's hot out, when it's cold out, take the shower after work, the way Donald Trump treated members of the building and construction trades when he was doing projects in New York and Atlantic City makes you sick, right? He would go and make a contract with a small business person. And he'd say, I'm going to pay you $100,000 or $1 million, whatever it is. You do the work, right? The workers go out, the plumbers, the pipe fitters, all the different members of the building trades go out, they do their job. And then when it's all over, he says, I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar. Or I'll give you 30 cents on the dollar. You got a problem with it? Sue me, I'm Donald Trump, I'll tie you up in court. So he doesn't pay the contractor. Workers don't get paid. Families don't make ends meet because Donald Trump needed to make a little bit more money. That's not how you treat people. That is not how you treat people. And he has screwed more workers and more people through the course of his business dealings that he has almost 4,000 lawsuits against him. Now, we all know business people. How many of you know got 4,000 lawsuits against them? I don't know any. I don't know any that have like more than 5 or 10. If one of my friends has a problem with the EPA or one person's, they freak out. Good, honest, noble, honorable business people don't get sued 4,000 times. So I'm saying this guy, Due Foch, he got 2 faces, and he's trying to sell us some snake oil in the Mahoning Valley, and we're not going to let him sell it. We're going to send him back out of here. So he buys his steel from China. He makes his suits in Mexico. He makes his ties in China and ships them back into the United States and puts our people out of work. When he hires our guys in the building and construction trades, he screws them and doesn't pay them. If he has a problem, he files bankruptcy and takes all his money. I want to say this before I bring the president out here, because we all grew up the same way, right? You spend your life, your entire business career, screwing average people, filing bankruptcy, and you take the money and you go buy expensive buildings and planes and helicopters, and you come fly around Ohio in your helicopter, guess what? I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed with you, Donald Trump. You do not impress me in the least bit. If you earn your money, if you treated your workers well, I'd be cheering for you. I love people who start businesses and create wealth and hire people. God bless. That's America. Make as much money as you possibly can. But when you do, pay your taxes, for God's sake. Right? We're not even having a discussion about maybe you should pay a little more in taxes, maybe a little bit here. Just pay taxes. That's all we're asking you to do, because he comes in and says, boy, we need to rebuild the country. Boy, we have a large deficit. Boy, our education system needs more money. Boy, we need to do this, rebuild our military. It would be very helpful, Donald Trump, for us to do all those things if you paid your damn taxes. That's what's at stake. And I don't mean to be graphic, but this guy, to our friends in the trades, to our steel workers, who he's been treating very unfairly, he will gut you, and he will walk over your cold, dead body, and he won't even flinch. He'll climb over your cold, dead body and get on his helicopter. Right? I don't mean to be dramatic, but that's what's at stake. And we have a candidate that I've never been more proud to support. Someone, when we were trying to put tariffs on this Chinese steel, she was testifying to say, slap the tariffs on the Chinese steel. Our companies in New York are getting hurt. That was Hillary Clinton while Donald Trump was buying the Chinese steel. And while people were trying to gut Davis-Bacon and project labor agreements and all the things that keep our guys getting a good wage, Hillary Clinton was fighting for that while Donald Trump was not paying those very same workers. We got a clear choice in this election. Very, very clear. So let's do our work. Let's do our work in the next few weeks. Let's make it happen. Let's knock on doors. Polls are shifting in Ohio because people are starting to finally pay attention. The Buckeyes are winning. The Browns are marching to the Super Bowl. One of those is true. One of those is true. But people are starting to pay attention again in Ohio. Bill Clinton is here. He had 3,000 people in Athens, Ohio yesterday. He was in Steubenville. He's here in Youngstown, Boardman. He's going to Niles. We're going to Warren. We're going to Canton. We are going to win Ohio, and we are going to send Hillary Clinton to the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
It might seem crazy. you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning. Thanks for coming out. I think we ought to give Tim Ryan another hand. He was great. He is one of my favorite members of Congress because he has a good mind and a good heart. And he's done a great job for all of you. He's also one of the leaders of the House Manufacturing Caucus, and he knows, for reasons I'll explain in a minute, we can get more manufacturing jobs back in America if we do the smart things. I want to thank the folks on the pre-program. Thanks to Daniel Hastings, our Ohio Together Coordinated Campaign leader. Thanks to Rocky DeGennaro for what he said and for his leadership. Thanks to Local 66 for letting us come here. I want to thank Senator Joe Schiavone for being here, the Democratic Party Chair of Mahoning County, Dave Bettis, thank you. Thanks to the Mayor of Warren, Doug Franklin. Paul Gaines, the prosecuting attorney. Thanks to the Mahoning County Commissioners who are here. Anthony Traficante, thank you very much. Thank you, Dave Ditzler. Thank you, Carol Rigetti. Thank you to the Trumbull County Commissioners, Dan Polifka, and all the people who are here. I'm glad you're here. If you got seats, sit. I want to do something kind of radical for this campaign. Has this been a crazy campaign or what? I would like to talk about what this election means to you. Not to the politicians, not to the political press, not to you. I turned 70 this year. I have now spent half my lifetime trying to help other people make a living, educate their kids, get health care for their families, start small businesses, sell their products and their services, make the economy and the society work for everybody. I've worked in America and around the world. And what I know is this: wherever people are fairly sharing the bounty of the economy, wherever workers earn a fair return for their labor and are rewarded when they increase their productivity and their production, wherever the economic engine is not dominated like too much of America is today, where the finance tail is wagging the business dog instead of the other way around, good things are happening. Wherever people use the financial advantage to take too much, wherever conflict mars every aspect of daily life and every practical problem is turned into an ideological battlefield, there are real problems everywhere in the world and throughout my life for 35 of those 70 years. This election matters for a lot of reasons. There are serious national security challenges to the United States at home and around the world. And if they get out of hand, it could not only cost a lot of good people their lives, it could totally derail the attempt to bring the economy back. We have honest differences of opinion about a whole range of cultural issues, but the truth is our youth and diversity relative to other big countries is our greatest advantage. So we better learn how to live together and share the future together. And I believe we're just as close to going to a 21st century version of the kind of broadly shared prosperity we had when I was privileged to be your president. But it is not going to happen if we vote to continue gridlock and divisive politics and putting each other down and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to happen. We have a colossal opportunity. And one of the things I don't agree with Hillary's opponent on is, everything is just terrible and we're all a bunch of losers. The militaries are losers. The general doesn't know as much about ISIS as he does. Poor generals. everybody's a loser. Oh, really? We just posted the 79th month in a row of job growth, the longest consecutive months of job growth in the history of the United States since we've been keeping these numbers. This last year, for the first time since I left office, we had a huge bump in personal income, 5% over the previous year. And it's the first time that 80% of the people, that is on the bottom 80%, got the lion's share of the gain, not the top 1% or the top 1/10 of 1%. We got the makings here to rise together again. I think personally that 10 years from now, I've said this in almost every stop, that people will look back on this period and they'll give President Obama better economic marks than they do now, because he took office just a couple of months after the worst crash since the Great Depression. And that crash had a long tail. That means it took a long time before we really got over it. We started generating jobs way before we started generating income. And he had a Congress determined to derail everything he wanted to do. But in the end, America's coming back. This election decision will make it happen quicker and better and fuller and fairer, or we'll put it all at risk. And so let's just begin with numbers, because there's been lots of hot air. Let's just talk about the numbers. Does seem to agree with the most extreme Republicans on is the wonderful beauty of trickle-down economics. The answer to every economic problem is to cut taxes one more time on millionaires and billionaires, and repeal the health care law, get rid of the banking regulations that are designed to keep Wall Street from wrecking Main Street again. You know, just pretend everything will be wonderful if we just give the people who already have so much everything. And if the government will stop trying to stop bad things from happening and to assure reasonable fairness. So let's look at the score. We've been fighting this battle between invest and grow economics, that's our side, and trickle down for 35 years now. The Republicans have often, lately with both the White House and the Congress, have been in the White House for 20 of those 35 years, and we for 15, a little more than that, 15 and a half now. So what's the private sector job growth? We know how they hate government. Let's just be fair to them. Let's just talk about the private sector job growth. Here's the score. Democrats, 32.3 million. Republicans, 15.3. Private sector jobs. And the numbers would be better, 3 million better for our side, but President Obama's first 2 years were marked by the long slide that followed the clash. And so I'll give them that. Our side still wins 2-1. Middle class economics and giving poor people a chance to work into the middle class and giving everybody a reasonable chance to be rewarded for their labor, giving people the ability to start a small business and keep it going. It works better. And now we got a chance to do it again. What we need to do is simple, straightforward, and affordable. Its only problems are whether we can overcome political gridlock in Washington and not be derailed by trouble around the world. So you need to vote for somebody who A, has the right ideas, B, has a proven record of getting things done, including with Republicans, and C, has a proven record of being able to accomplish things in the world that will keep us safer and give us the space we need to grow out of the mess we've been in and to take the rest of the world along with us. It's a pretty straightforward thing if you look at it from the point of view of your family, your work, your children, your grandchildren. And so, for whatever it's worth, here's what I think. Hillary's economic strategy is comprehensive and is focused on bringing middle-class incomes up, creating more jobs, creating more upward mobility so younger people don't feel stuck, giving poor people a chance to work their way into the middle class, and letting us all rise together. And I'll just give you, we can get more jobs more quickly by taking advantage of the fact that interest rates are still lower than inflation. We need a big national infrastructure campaign to rebuild our roads, our bridges, our ports, our airports. But it needs to be 21st century infrastructure, which means we also need more efficient electrical grids. I'll give you an example. We rank first or second in the world in the ability to generate electricity from the sun, the wind, and other clean resources. The problem is that very often the sun shines brightest and the wind blows hardest where the people are not, which means you need an efficient way to move electricity across the country. Once you build that stuff, it's virtually free. You want to bring manufacturing back? What are the main variants in manufacturing costs today in the world? Labor is less of a factor. It's energy, materials, and transportation. Okay, we got the biggest market in the world in America. So anything you make here, the transportation costs will be less than if you bring it from somewhere else. The materials costs are fairly constant. Since labor is more and more productive every year, you can pay people good incomes to do this work, and it won't mess up the competitive pricing. The one big variable is energy. So we should modernize our electrical grids so that we can be competitive there. We're already competitive in transportation costs. Nobody can do any more than anybody else about the materials cost. And all we have to do is to be productive to pay high wages. And we can bring manufacturing back here. And the reason you should be for it is not that we can have as many manufacturing jobs as we had 50 years ago, because fewer people can produce more stuff every year. Manufacturing is highly predicted. You should be for it because it makes us stronger, more independent, because every manufacturing job will create 2.5 other jobs in the economy of every state in the United States. We can do that. 2, we need a modern infrastructure, which means we need to recognize right up front that Flint, Michigan is by no means the only city in this country where our children have elevated lead levels in their blood because of old rusty water pipes. If you tore all those water pipes up and put new ones down, and they'd be American jobs putting those new ones down, we could give every kid in this country a healthy future and modernize the economy. We need a modern infrastructure. In school today, 5 million children in the United States will be given a homework assignment that either requires or at least would be easier to comply with if they had access to the internet. But they don't have it. 5 million of them. If we built a modern, national, affordable broadband network, it would create enormous educational opportunities and big-time economic opportunities for small towns and rural areas that have been isolated from the national economy because they can't log on. It would create more jobs. It would do a lot of things. And it doesn't cost much money. And every place where people have had the money to do it on their own, they totally redesigned their economy. Knoxville, Tennessee did it. It was in bad shape. They had enough money, enough people, they got together, and they spent the money to modernize their electrical grid. Within 5 years, they had a whole different economy and thousands of jobs. We can do these things if we do them together. So that's the first thing. Second thing we have to do is to recognize that in addition to manufacturing, we got to gin up our small business economy again. 2/3 of the new jobs created in America in the last 20 years have been small business jobs. Now, this Dodd-Frank bill, I already told you I like it, that it keeps Wall Street from wrecking Main Street. Not too much speculation, a lot of incentives to put money back in. You have to control the big banks. The problem is community banks and community banking were supposed to be exempt from the most onerous requirements, and especially things like you got to have real estate for collateral for a loan if it's a small business loan. As a practical matter, it's much more costly in many places to make these small business loans than it used to be, and people are afraid to take a chance. Suppose you wanted to go out and borrow, I'm making these numbers up, but suppose you wanted to borrow somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 to open your own bakery. If it costs your local bank as much to make a $60,000 loan as it does to make a $6 million loan or a $60 million loan, what will happen? Won't be as many $60,000 loans. When I was president, every year we were in the top 5 countries in the world, top 5 in starting new businesses. We are not in the top 10 now. Hillary is the only candidate who has actually analyzed these rules, says here's how the rules should be changed, here are the incentives we should give, here's how we're going to cut paperwork for small business, make credit flow more easily, and get the small business engine of this country going again. It will make a huge difference, and we need to do that. And there are several other things we can do. Put more money into science and technology and give it to every college and university throughout the country, because if they can generate economic activities in their neighborhoods, they get to keep the profits and plow them back in. Just think about it. You can have your own economic development bank in any region in Chicago. I just came back from Chicago thinking about this. In any region in Illinois or Michigan or Indiana or Ohio that has a university. I'll give you an example. Everybody knows how much trouble Appalachia's in. But in eastern Kentucky, there's a college called Morehead State. NASA gives them money every year to do research in nanotechnology. That's a fancy way of saying itsy-bitsy computing power. I spent $500 million of your tax money on that to start us doing this. So they invited me to see the results. There are undergraduates from eastern Kentucky making satellites that weigh 8 pounds, you can hold them in your hand, that cost $1 million a piece and can do the same thing those $400 million communication satellites do up in space. They're teenagers from coal country who've been told there's no economic hope. They don't think that. And I was there the other day, right at the end of the primary season, a couple months ago, and I was meeting all these young people. And this 19-year-old kid from eastern Kentucky was jamming this satellite, this computing power, down in a little box about 1.25 inches cubed. So I said to him, what's a container made out of? And he looked up at me with his twang and he said, it's made out of tungsten. It does real well in outer space. I said, where'd you get it? He said, I made it here with a 3D printer. Every one of the kids, undergraduates in this program, was from eastern Kentucky. He said, I made it here with a 3D printer. And they looked up at me and smiled. He said, Mr. President, don't let them make fun of Hillary for saying we're going to put up 500 million solar panels. He said, actually, I think she's a little low. And I said, why do you think that? He said, because in a couple of years, we'll be making them with these 3D printers too, and they'll be cheap as dirt. We can put them everywhere, make electricity virtually free, and we'll all be free, and we'll rise economically. Now, why am I telling you this? Because everything you read in the newspaper is, oh, it's hopeless and everything's going to hell in a handbasket and all this stuff we've been told. That isn't true. We just got to do the right thing in the right way and do it together. And so how are we going to make sure we can take everybody along? Well, Hillary was the first candidate and is now the only candidate left to offer a set of incentives that would give businesses an actual tax cut, and a big one if they invest in areas with high unemployment and low per capita incomes. If they would go to coal country or to Indian country or to these small towns and rural areas that hadn't had a new job in 15 years, or to some places in the cities of the country that still haven't had any economic recovery, and put money there. She said, you want to help grow the economy, give everybody a job, give everybody a fair chance? Do this, we'll cut your taxes. She also believes we should raise taxes on people that move their jobs out of America when they're making money, and use the money to pay for the infrastructure program. But let's stay on the cutting side. She believes we should cut taxes for companies that fairly share their profits with their employees instead of giving them all to their biggest shareholders and the top management. She believes we should cut taxes for companies that help to finance things like union training programs, job training programs to increase the productivity and impact of their workers so they can own more money, make more money. But she thinks somebody does what Carrier Air Conditioning did in Indiana should pay more. You guys know about that, right? So they throw 2,100 people under the bus in a furniture manufacturing division, furnace manufacturing division that made $2.9 billion last year, where the profit margins on each item sold were increasing. Why did they do that? Because their richest shareholders demanded their money back in a year and a day. So all they cared about was a short-term rise in the stock price. And they declined to pay the president the full bonus because he didn't do that. So he said, okay, and the board literally voted to get rid of 2,100 jobs in Indiana and a highly productive plant making money hand over fist with their profit margins increasing. So what Hillary says is, if you go down there, you got to give back all the money you ever got from the local, state, and federal government, and we ought to put a tariff on them if they try to bring that stuff back, because if they were losing money, we'd all wish them well, wouldn't we? If they couldn't make a living to save their lives, they'd say, look, you got a right to do what you have to do to save this business. Nobody's suggesting that. But when you're making money and you're making more money every year, and one or two stockholders buy so much stock they say, it isn't enough, it isn't enough, it isn't enough, that's the finance tail wagging the economic dog. Whenever that happens, whenever the tail wags the dog, the only thing that's happy is the tail. You got a disoriented dog, it's going to bite somebody before long. And look, this is great. This is really simple. So her position is, if you want to run your business like this, fine. But let's stop giving lower tax rates for people that just hold their stock a year and a day. Let's recognize that the companies that make the most money are the ones that treat their workers well, share their profits with them, and keep training them. And let's give them an even lower tax rate if they hold the stock for 5 years. We don't mind people making money. We just want to make it by building a middle-class society again and giving people a chance to work their way up and have upward mobility. Now, then you got to help the working families that are part of it. That's why it matters. I was listening to the way in that vice presidential debate last night, the Republican nominee for vice president tried to shinny his way out of a discussion of this. But that's why it's important to raise the minimum wage. That's why equal pay is important. That's why it's important to have paid leave. We're one of only 7 countries on the planet that doesn't have any paid leave laws. That's why it's important to have affordable preschool and child care, because workers have kids. And the most important job of any society is raising children. It's more important than any economic job or any political job any of us will ever have. That's why it works. And other people that are doing it are being quite successful at maintaining high levels of income and upward mobility. It bothers me to know that there are other countries where a kid that was born in the kind of life that I was born into has a better chance to build a good, solid middle-class life than they do in America. That's wrong. This is about economics that applies to all of us without regard to our race, our religion, our background. We have to have a chance to rise together. We cannot take advantage of the immense youth and diversity of our workforce unless they all have a chance to rise together. And last thing I want to say is you got to make college affordable, the debt repayable, and we have to re-dignify skills training so people can get good jobs that don't require a 4-year college education through training programs. We have got to do that. Next to that young fella in eastern Kentucky making his little tungsten computer box, by far the most impressive things I saw in the primary season were the training programs run by America's unions to increase the productivity of their own workforce. They deserve to be paid well when they do those things. So, how are we going to do that? Hillary is the only person that has a plan to make college affordable. And it's pretty straightforward. Free tuition at community college for everybody. Free tuition for every family at 4-year colleges with incomes of $125,000 or less. That's 85% of us. Debt-free graduation for everybody through work-study options and other things. And then for the people that have debt, let them pay it off as a small fixed percentage of their income. Never, even if they borrowed $200,000 to get out of medical school, never more than 10% of their after-tax income a month. Now think what this would mean. And let everybody refinance a college debt. You know a college loan is the only loan you can't refinance. I bought a pair of jeans from a woman a few months ago I've been doing business with for a long time, and she's a very nice person, and she just had a son graduate from one of New York State colleges, and I said, "How's your boy doing?" "Oh," she said, "he's doing great. He's got good grades. He's going to get a good job." I said, "You got any student debt?" He said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, he's got quite a bit." I said, "What's the interest rate?" 9%. Then I said, "Do you have a home mortgage?" She said, "Sure, look what I do for a living." "Of course I do." I said, "Did you refinance when interest rates went down?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What's your interest rate?" She said, "Under 4. Now there's something wrong when a middle-aged person who's done most of their spending on their kids has an interest rate that's less than half what the child does just about to go out and start his or her way in the world. This is wrong. So Hillary wants everybody to be able to refinance. If you do that, overnight, more than 20 million Americans would save more than $2,000. So you refinance your loan, then she would give everybody 2 options to pay it off. You can pay it off directly if you own like an average amount in 3 or 4 years of public service work where you do nothing but that. If you decide to pay it off in a different way, you can turn it into a mortgage-like instrument where you pay up to 10% and never more than that a month of your income. If you don't have it paid off in 20 years, the rest is forgiven. And if you're in anything that's related to public service, if you teach school, if you're a nurse, anything that's related to public service, after 10 years, it's forgiven. Now just think what that would do. That would liberate the energies of this whole generation of young millennials. And here's another thing that's really important about her plan. You get a credit rating again. A lot of these young people can't get a small business loan to save their lives. They got shot credit. Once you get a fixed payment per month, that's determined by your income, you can be eligible for loans. If you want to start your own business, under her plan, if Congress will pass it, and the Republicans should, they say they love small business. Under her plan, your loan repayments would be suspended for 3 years while you get your business up and going. Now think about that. Think what we could do in an America where you just took this debt worry off the shoulders of tens of millions of people. Not that that wouldn't be repaid, but it would be repaid on terms that were bearable. This is the kind of thing we need to do. It will allow us to grow together, to rise together. Now, will that solve all of our problems? No. We've got a lot of problems. We've got problems in law enforcement, problems in controversies over immigration, and all these other things. She believes, and I believe this really strongly, and I live in a county now in New York that has an unemployment rate of under 4%, and we got a lot of immigrants, and they're wildly popular, and nobody wants to send them home because they're law-abiding, they're working hard, they're paying taxes, their kids are in the schools. And we need to resolve this in a way not that puts them ahead of the line to apply for citizenship if they don't have proper documentation, but at least stops them worrying about whether somebody's going to come jerk their kid out of school and send them all back. We would go into a terrible recession if we did that. And this again, I noticed the other day, last night when they were talking about this, the Republican nominee for vice president, he didn't really talk about the fact that there's nobody running for office who believes people with serious criminal records who don't have documentation should stay in this country. He didn't say that because nobody believes that. Nobody believes anybody should get ahead of anybody else in the line, but we need to resolve this. The biggest problems we have now affect us all. We got the biggest drug epidemic, prescription drugs, heroin, and fentanyl we've had in a long time, and it's the only one in my life where the epidemic has higher addiction rates in small towns in rural America than big cities. We all need it. Who was the first candidate in this race to offer a plan to do something about it? Hillary. When she met with all these chiefs of police the other day, the chief said, we do want to be better police, but we need community policing. We need to know our neighbors because they need us too. We want body cameras. We want training. We want people to trust us again. We don't want kids or their parents to be afraid to go out at night. But we also need mental health because otherwise we're going to have a lot of violent encounters for people whose lives could have been saved if they could have gotten the help they needed earlier. She was the first person to call for that. Look, Hillary spent a lifetime, long before she ever ran for office, on family and children issues, on education issues. As a senator, she got into serious economic issues in upstate New York, which had been left out and left behind. That's why she won up there when she ran for president. Because they could point to things she had done that had created huge numbers of jobs. And as Secretary of State, I noticed last night when they were debating that, they were talking about Russia. Governor Kane, Senator Kane now said, well, let's not forget the only deal we made with Russia in the last 8 years was one she made to lower the threat of accidental or intentional nuclear war. And with all the tensions we've had, that's a good thing. She has done a lot of things in her life, always to make positive change. Is this a change election? You bet it is, but you got to pick the right change. I was talking to this friend of mine on the phone day before yesterday from Texas, and he's got great one-liners. I said, give me a one-liner I can use in my speech today. He said, in his Texas drawl, he says, if you don't want somebody to drive a truck off a cliff, don't give them the keys. So that's my pitch. We are just this close to being able to rise again. We don't have to pretend we don't have problems. We got to embrace them, but we got to do it together. Stronger together is not just some little political phrase. The economy works better if we work together. The society works better if we live together. And we can't solve our national security problems unless we do it together, and we need allies. And everywhere in the world, people are living like that. Good things are happening. Everywhere in the world, people spend all their time. Surely there is some tweet I can read or some website I can find that will say something bad about somebody I don't like. Surely I can wake up every day and find somebody who will pour acid down my throat one more time. Look, there's a reason for the road rage today. People gone 15 years without a raise, they're mad. You go to work every day, you don't think you'll ever get a raise again. You can't take care of your kids. You can't guarantee their education. You can't pay for health care. I haven't talked about that, but I strongly supported that bill, and it's given more than 20 million people more insurance, and it's repealed the most insidious thing that affected millions of families, the pre-existing condition ability of insurance companies not to insure people or to close them too much. But there are problems with it. There are problems with it. And everybody knows it. The Republicans want to repeal the law. Their idea of solving the problem is to take 20 million people who've got insurance and take it away from them. Give it all back to insurance companies again. Hillary's idea is recognize what the problem is. The people just above the line of eligibility for Medicaid expansion. Just above the line in eligibility for the subsidies, mostly small businesses and their employees. And give them affordable insurance. Let them buy into Medicare or have another public option so we can all do it. Insurance doesn't work well for health care. The company that writes health and property and casualty and life insurance, it's all much more predictable with much bigger pools and much less variation. In healthcare, virtually all the costs are claimed every year by 20% of us, and it's a shifting 20%. We got to fix that. But it's all doable. It's a question of whether you believe we're better off in this election lashing out in anger or embracing answers. Are we better off voting our resentments or wanting to be empowered, and more importantly, wanting this young generation to be empowered so we can start rising together again? Do we want to be together, or would we rather be divided? Do we want to face the future with walls or bridges? All over the world, people are facing this. And lots of votes, people have said, oh no, I want the walls. I can't stand all this change. I'm going to come inside, close the door, turn the lights off, and hope when I wake up in a few years it'll be better. This is understandable. I completely understand what's going on. But it's not the right decision. We're doing better. There's not a country in the world that's had 79 months of job growth but the United States of America. And all we got to do is start raising the incomes again and raising it. We can do this, but we got to do it together. And you got a chance to vote for a woman who has gotten Republican support for everything she's ever done. When she was First Lady, when she was a Senator, when she was Secretary of State. They'll say bad things about her, but she'll always leave the door open and then be the grown-up in the room and say, okay, now settle down, what are we going to do? She's a what are we going to do person. And the older I get, the more I like deeds and the less I care about the words. What are we going to do? I tell you what we're going to do if you elect her president. We're going to rise again, and we're going to do it together. God bless you.